The most produced towed artillery piece in the world hasn't been manufactured in Russia for 30 years. It is also the gun currently firing more rounds on Europe's most active front than any system NATO has fielded. It was designed in 1954. This is the D-30 122mm Howitzer, built to give Soviet motor rifle regiments a single gun that fires in any direction without being repositioned. The reason that matters more than guidance packages and GPS locks is the same reason cities change hands when production lines stop. Soviet tank columns in the early 1950s regularly outran their own fire support. The M-30 howitzer assigned to protect them could only fire into a 49-degree arc. To engage a target outside that arc, the crew stopped firing, repositioned the entire weapon, re-emplaced it, and reacquired. In the armored advances, Soviet doctrine demanded that sequence broke fire support at the moment it was needed most. Speed made it worse. Motor rifle regiments moved on BTR columns at highway pace, and the M-30 needed a separate limber vehicle to tow it, a requirement that added a link to a logistics chain already under pressure. A gun that arrives after the crisis it was sent to resolve is not a fire support asset. The 1954 Soviet requirement was specific: traverse in every direction without repositioning, set up under 3 minutes, anti-tank capable, light enough to tow at 60 kilometers per hour with a standard truck. Meet all four or start again. Every existing design in the Soviet inventory failed at least one of them, and the reason came down to geometry. To fire in every direction without moving, a gun needs a stable platform under recoil from any bearing. A stable platform requires the carriage legs to be set. Set legs, lock traverse. 3 requirements, and satisfying 2 destroys the third. A self-propelled howitzer solves it by putting the gun on a rotating turret on a tracked chassis. It costs 8 to 12 times as much to build as a towed weapon, requires dedicated maintenance infrastructure, and cannot be stockpiled at the volume Soviet doctrine required for a full divisional artillery complement. The Soviet Army needed hundreds per division, not dozens. The alternative was a wider arc split trail design. The American M114 traversed 25 degrees either side of centerline, 50 degrees total. Against an armored threat arriving from an unexpected bearing during a fast advance, 50 degrees is the same as pointing the wrong way. Repositioning under fire takes 4 to 6 minutes. In most engagements at that range and speed, the engagement is already over. Every platform in the inventory was built for a battle that stays in front of the gun. The D-30 was designed for battles that do not. The solution required breaking the geometric constraint that every previous design had accepted as fixed. A D-30 crew never touches the trail legs to change direction. That sounds like an obvious outcome. No comparable artillery system in Soviet service in 1954 could do it. And the reason it matters is not convenience. A gun crew repositioning under counter-battery fire is a gun crew not firing. Every second the weapon is stationary and silent is a second the threat it was sent to neutralize is still active. Fyodor Petrov's team at OKB-9 rejected the 2-leg trail. 3 legs instead, each 120 degrees apart. When the gun emplaces, the wheels lift clear of the ground and each trail is spiked independently. The barrel assembly sits on a central pivot. Traverse becomes a rotation around that pivot, with the mount absorbing the recoil load from any bearing. The weapon does not move to face the threat. Setup takes under 2.5 minutes. No special tools required. The D-30 can be fully maintained in the field with a wrench and a large hammer. A weapon serviceable by a conscript without a technical support chain is a weapon that can be stockpiled at division scale and kept operational in the quantities the doctrine demands. Simplicity was the specification, not the compromise. One limit built into the design: full range of 15.3 kilometers is only achievable within the 48-degree arc directly between each leg pair. For roughly 60% of the total traverse, range drops to around 12 kilometers when the breach passes over a trail leg. Full traverse is real. Full range fire in every direction is not. The traverse problem was solved. The production economics behind the solution are what the Doctrine was actually betting on. The standard 122mm O F4 6.2 HE shell weighs 21.8 kilograms and carries 3.5 kilograms of TNT. A 155mm M 107 NATO HE shell carries 6.6 kilograms of TNT and weighs 43 kilograms. The 155mm round delivers roughly twice the explosive per shot and weighs twice as much per round, which means a logistics vehicle carries half as many shells per load. At 6 to 8 rounds per minute, a 155mm battery burns through resupply twice as fast as a 122mm battery firing the same number of rounds. One GPS-guided Excalibur 155mm shell costs between $68,000 and $112,000 US. One OF4.6 round costs approximately $200 to $300. That is a 400 to 1 cost ratio in favor of the D-30's ammunition. A single Excalibur buys 350 rounds of 122mm. At 6 rounds per minute, that is nearly an hour of continuous fire. Soviet Doctrine did not ask how much damage one shell does. It asked how many shells could be delivered before the supply ran out, and what the cumulative probability of kill across the full sequence adds up to. Avdiivka is the most recent answer to that question. On October 6, 1973, Egyptian forces opened the Yom Kippur War with a massed artillery bombardment across the Suez Canal as part of Operation Badr. D-30s were among the systems fielded and confirmed in post-war assessments of the campaign. The outcome demonstrated at scale what the D-30 was built to do: volume of fire from rapidly emplaced towed howitzers as the primary artillery component of a coordinated surprise offensive without the logistics chain of self-propelled systems. Post-1973, both Egypt and Syria mounted D-30 barrels on T-34 tank hulls to gain mobility. That modification tells you something. The gun's firepower was considered worth adapting around rather than replacing. In Ukraine from February 2022, D-30 batteries operated on both sides from the opening days. Russian Ministry of Defense footage confirmed D-30s in active use in the Donetsk direction through 2024. Artillery accounted for approximately 80% of casualties on both sides, a figure widely cited, primary source unconfirmed. What was confirmed publicly by Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Syrsky in August 2024. Russia was expending up to 45,000 rounds daily against Ukraine's 14,600. That ratio, sustained over months, is what Avdiivka looked like from inside. What neither side tells you is that the gun producing that ratio most cheaply has a drone problem the Soviets never designed for. A towed gun that takes 2.5 minutes to emplace is survivable in a drone-saturated environment only for as long as it remains undetected. Russian artillery cooperating with UAVs can execute a precision fire mission within 3 to 5 minutes of target detection. Those two timelines are now roughly equal. Russia acknowledged this directly. In August 2024, the MTS-15 Clever mounted a D-30 barrel on a remotely operated platform capable of transitioning to a firing position in 30 seconds. That system exists because the gun it carries became operationally vulnerable in the environment it was being used in. The D-30's volume of fire argument is intact. Its survivability argument on a drone-saturated front line is not. That tension matters because it points to something the Western doctrine that competed with the D-30 also failed to anticipate. NATO fire support doctrine after the Cold War rested on two assumptions: precision munitions reduce shells required per target, and air superiority suppresses counter-battery capability. Both held in Iraq and Afghanistan. Neither has held in Ukraine, and the production decisions made on the basis of those assumptions have proven difficult to reverse quickly. Western countries spent 3 decades consolidating 155mm shell production and removing reserve manufacturing capacity on the basis that 1 accurate round replaces 5 unguided ones. U.S. production had fallen to fewer than 3,000 artillery rounds per month by the 2000s. Russia spent those same 3 decades building stockpiles. By 2025, Russian 122mm and 152mm shell production reached an estimated 4.2 million rounds annually. The D-30 did not outperform Western systems because it is a better gun. It contributed to a firing advantage because the doctrine behind it never stopped treating shells as a production problem rather than a procurement problem. When that industrial logic runs into attrition limits, the retirement question becomes unavoidable. The D-30 is no longer manufactured in Russia. The stockpile is finite and actively being depleted. Russia currently produces an estimated 800,000 rounds of 122mm ammunition annually to keep those barrels firing. When the guns are attrited beyond operational threshold, that production has no barrel left to feed. No towed artillery system in current Western inventory matches the D-30's weight-to-volume of fire ratio at its logistics cost. Self-propelled replacements cost an order of magnitude more to build. Guided munitions cost 2 orders of magnitude more per round. The D-30 solves one specific problem: high volume, low cost, mass-producible indirect fire at divisional scale. Nothing in current Western procurement is designed to solve that same problem in the same weight class. When the stockpiles are gone, that gap does not fill itself. The D-30 is not still relevant because it is a sophisticated weapon. It is still relevant because the doctrine built to replace it assumed wars would not be fought this way again, and that assumption has now been tested in real time on a live front. The industrial question it raises, what it actually costs to rebuild volume fire capability from a standing start, is the question every NATO procurement office is currently trying to avoid answering. If you want to understand what those numbers look like and which systems are already being designed to close that gap, subscribe. You're going to want to stay around for this one.